My name is Trisha Hayes. I'm 25 years old, and according to my dad, I've always been book smart, but not business smart. He loved saying that. It was his little comedy routine disguised as fatherly wisdom. My daughter gets straight A's, he'd joke to anyone with ears, but I still wouldn't trust her with a staple gun. People laughed. He laughed. I pretended it didn't sting, like it wasn't the kind of sentence that settles in your bones over time. In our house, business wasn't just important, it was sacred. And the center of that religion was Henderson Tools, my dad's industrial equipment company. One of the few things he prized more than his morning cable news and steak that still bled. Growing up, the smell of machine oil and cardboard was basically my childhood perfume. I spent my early years running between aisles of boxed wrenches, playing Jedi with paint stirrers, and imagining that the warehouse shelves were giant skyscrapers. Dad held court in the break room like he was the CEO of the whole planet. Employees nodded at every word. He walked like a man who believed gravity worked harder on other people. Meanwhile, I, his younger daughter, was treated like the intern somebody forgot to send home. My older sister, Mara, was the golden child, the heir, the born leader. She shadowed Dad at 13, wore pressed polos like they were armor, and by high school she was shaking hands with suppliers and memorizing margins for fun. She brought a printed resume to Thanksgiving dinner once, just because. I wasn't like her. I like computers, design, optimization. I built websites for fun, edited videos for clubs, and even ran a small YouTube channel in college explaining personal finance using sock puppets. It actually made money, enough to cover groceries and the occasional late-night pizza. Dad called it cute. He said it with the same tone you'd use for a toddler showing you a crayon drawing. Fun little hobby, kiddo, he'd say. But real business, that's about grit, handshakes, and knowing when to push, not whatever TikTok thing you're doing. But the truth, I wasn't asking for validation, I wanted in. I worked summers at Henderson Tools from the moment I turned 16, loading pallets, driving forklifts, sweating through July inventory cycles so brutal that the concrete floor felt like a frying pan. One year, I nearly blew a disc stacking torque wrench sets. Dad's response? Warehouse builds character. So when I finally graduated with a business degree, honors included, thank you very much, I went to him with something real. I still remember standing in his office. The blinds were half open, dust swirling in the sun. On the wall behind him, framed photos of him and Mara at trade shows and distributor meetings. No photos of me. There never were. Dad, I said, my binder clutched like a lifeline, I want to invest in Henderson Tools. He didn't even blink. Really? He said. You? I nodded. I have 40,000 saved, between Grandma's inheritance and my own savings. I studied your margins and retail reach, and your lack of a proper e-commerce setup. I opened the binder. I want to help you build your digital arm, online ordering, contractor portal, support ticketing. Dad, you're losing money by staying offline. He glanced down at my charts, and then he laughed, an open-mouthed, desk-slapping, full-body laugh. He laughed so loud someone in the hall paused. Oh, Trisha, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. Sweetheart, you're not smart enough for that game. He didn't even mean it to hurt. That was the worst part. It was just fact to him. Stick to your YouTubes or podcasts or whatever it is you do. This is a real business. I felt something inside me crack, but he wasn't done. And anyway, you can't buy your way in. You have to earn it. Mara earned it. I thought about Mara's networking weekend in Vegas on the company card and tasted blood from biting my tongue. I just don't see you fitting in here, he added. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said, I figured. I walked out with my binder still open. Lisa, the receptionist, gave me a pity smile that felt worse than a slap. I held it together until I got into my car. Then I screamed into my steering wheel so loudly, the roofer in the truck beside me spilled his energy drink all over his pants. That night, I rage-watched 2 seasons of Succession, ate 4 toaster waffles, and stared at my laptop until 3 a.m. I wasn't angry because he said no. I was angry because he didn't even look. He didn't ask a single question, didn't flip a page, didn't even consider the possibility that I might have a place in the company. A tiny part of me whispered, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not business smart. My boyfriend Adam texted, how'd it go? Want to talk? I left the message unread. I didn't want comfort. I wanted leverage. So I fell down an internet rabbit hole, the kind fueled by spite and a business degree. My search history became a psychological thriller. How to beat a family business legally. Tool industry market share trends. Difference between ratchet and wrench, not a dumb question. But I wasn't just researching, I was hunting for an angle. And that's when I found Ironhawk Supply Company. They were everything Henderson Tools pretended to be. Sleek website, live chat, mobile friendly, automated warehouses, real-time inventory tracking. Their branding was crisp, professional, modern. Dad always sneered at them. Cheap junk, he'd mutter. All marketing, no backbone. Funny he'd say that, considering his last tech upgrade was adding an American flag GIF to the homepage. I dug deeper, and the deeper I dug, the more my pulse sped up. Ironhawk wasn't junk. They were the future. I built spreadsheets, then bigger spreadsheets. I added tabs, graphs, automated formulas. I even made a mood board for no reason except that spite is sometimes an aesthetic. At 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday, with my eyes burning and my stomach full of bad decisions, I realized Ironhawk is going to eat Henderson Tools alive. And for the first time ever, I wasn't sad about that. I was curious. What if I stopped begging for a seat in Dad's kingdom and joined the company built to topple it? The next morning, I called my bank and did something Dad would never, ever expect from his not business smart daughter. I invested $37,000 into Ironhawk shares. I used the remaining $3,000 for rent and a power haircut that made me look like a stressed porcupine. But whatever, it felt symbolic. I told no one, not Adam, not my group chat, no one. It was just me, my laptop, and a quiet, growing fire inside me. I joined Ironhawk's subreddit. Yes, they had one, with 7 members. One guy named Chuck posted weekly blurry photos of hex keys like they were baby pictures. I read every post like it mattered. And one night, under a thread complaining about Ironhawk's order tracking page, a reply appeared. Thanks for the feedback. We're building a better UX for order tracking now. Want a beta test? DM me. Mason, Ironhawk Co. I froze. The co-founder. On Reddit, asking for testers. I clicked his profile. Verified. This was it. A window my dad would never open for me. I took a breath and DM'd him. Hi, Mason. Longtime customer and shareholder. I actually mocked up a redesigned contractor dashboard a while ago. For fun. Would love to send it if you're open to feedback. It was framed like a casual hobby. But really, it was a loaded gun. He replied within a day. Send it. So I did. All of it. The PDF, the prototype, the notes, everything. I expected a polite thanks. 40 minutes later. You ever thought about consulting? I just stared at the message while my heart did backflips. I typed back the calmest lie ever written. I'm definitely open to helping on a project. Meanwhile, I was Googling, what does freelance consulting mean? Mason said a video call. I wore my best button down and hid the laundry behind my camera. Hi, Trisha, he said when his camera came on. Loved your mock-up. You're not a UX specialist by trade, right? I laughed. No, just mildly obsessed with fixing things that annoy me. That's the best kind of person, Mason said, smiling. We talked for 45 minutes. Ideas, humor, insights. A real conversation where someone actually listened. By the end, he said, we're piloting a program with independent contractors. Could really use your perspective. Part-time, flexible, interested? My entire soul screamed yes. I nodded calmly. Absolutely. And just like that, I became a consultant for Ironhawk. Dad didn't know. Mara didn't know. Henderson Tools had no idea that the daughter they brushed aside had just joined the competitor quietly sharpening its claws. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe them a single explanation. I had a seat at the table now, just not theirs. The more I worked with Ironhawk, the more I realized I wasn't just contributing to a project. I was becoming part of a family that valued ideas over titles. It wasn't about where you came from or who you were related to. It was about showing up, making things better, and making a difference. The kind of team I'd always dreamed of. Meanwhile, Dad's business, Henderson Tools, was starting to unravel. The first sign came in the form of an accidental email forwarded to my personal inbox. Lisa, the receptionist, had a bad habit of hitting reply all by accident. This time, it was a subject line that read, Urgent, client portal down again. Fix this before our distributors riot. I clicked the message, and the thread was pure chaos. Customers couldn't access their order histories. Some payments were getting lost. Glenn, the head of logistics, had somehow deleted a regional pricing file and tried to fix it by faxing an apology letter. Faxing, in 2024. And then there was Colin, my brother, the heir apparent. He was still riding high off his franchise-ready persona. He'd taken over the marketing department after Dad let go of the previous head of operations. But honestly, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I imagined Colin going through the motions, wearing that success like it was a suit, strutting into meetings with the confidence of someone who didn't care whether the ship was sinking as long as he had a seat at the table. At Ironhawk, I was doing real work, real change. I helped redesign their FAQ page, implemented a new order tracking system, and even suggested creating explainer videos for contractors. Mason, the co-founder, loved everything I did. It wasn't just good for a newcomer anymore. It was a fundamental shift in how they did business. The feedback was coming in fast, and the results spoke for themselves. Order times were down, sales were up, and contractors were happier. On the other hand, at Henderson, Dad had posted a blurry photo on Facebook with the caption, "Proud to be old school in a digital world." It looked like something out of a 1990s brochure. The comment section was filled with the same three cousins and a guy named Larry who thought he was leaving a Yelp review. Then Ironhawk made a major move. They hosted a regional demo event 5 miles away from Henderson's headquarters. Dad and Colin, the so-called industry professionals, walked right past Ironhawk's flashy tent, complete with product displays, a VR demo, and an actual espresso cart. I attended the event, not to rub it in their faces, but because I needed to see it for myself. I wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, practically hoping for a nervous breakdown, so I could blend in with the crowd. But the moment I saw my dad and Colin circling the Ironhawk booth, it was like watching two hawks realize their nest had Wi-Fi. Mason was there, shaking hands with one of the contractors who once threatened to throw a wrench at Dad for botching a shipment. The professionalism in his smile contrasted so sharply with the stiff, fake grins on Dad and Colin's faces. I couldn't help but feel the satisfaction creeping in. And when Dad walked up to Mason, I overheard him muttering, "Ironhawk, huh? You guys new in town?" Mason gave him that professional smile. "Nope, just scaling." He didn't break his gaze, didn't flinch. Dad's face twitched like it was trying to decide whether to smile or yell. I left before they could spot me, but the feeling of certainty stayed with me. Ironhawk wasn't just a competitor, they were the future, and I was helping build it. Meanwhile, back at Henderson, things were starting to fall apart. The next few weeks felt like a slow-motion crash. A couple of long-term distributors switched over to Ironhawk. I didn't celebrate their losses. I just kept my head down and focused on what I was building. Ironhawk's numbers were starting to surge, and even our warehouse automation was getting rave reviews. Then came the email, the real kicker. It was a quarterly update from Ironhawk's leadership team. The subject line read, "New advisory board members." I clicked the email, and there it was, my name, listed as one of the new advisory members. It was a small role, mostly just virtual meetings, brainstorming sessions, but it came with real weight. It was validation for all the late nights, all the work I'd put into the projects. I felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. This was it, the moment I finally had real value. Not because of my last name or who I knew, but because of the work I was doing. But the best part? Nobody at Henderson knew. Not Dad, not Colin. I wasn't just an outsider anymore, I was on the inside. One evening, I got a call from Dad. The caller ID flashed, and for a moment, I thought about not answering. But I did. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks, not since our last confrontation, but this time, he was the one calling. "Trisha," he said, his voice sharp, "we need to talk." I sighed, trying to keep my tone steady. "Sure, what's up?" "I heard you've been helping Ironhawk." He didn't even try to soften it. I froze. This was it. He was going to confront me about the whole thing. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice cold. "You've been working with them behind my back?" I swallowed. "Not behind your back, Dad, I told you. I'm not trying to tear down your business. I'm just building my own." "I see," he said, voice lowering. "So, this is how it's going to be, huh?" "I'm doing what I should have been allowed to do a long time ago. I'm building something that matters. And I'm not doing it to take you down. I'm doing it because you didn't think I could." There was silence, the kind that said more than any words could. "You've embarrassed this family," he finally said. I could hear the crack in his voice, but I didn't flinch. "No, Dad, you just didn't see me. You never did." I pressed the edge of the conversation harder. "You never wanted me in the business. You always saw me as a side note, so I found something else that valued me. Now you want me to help you out of the hole you dug yourself in?" "You don't understand legacy," he said, his voice smaller now. No, Dad, I understand it better than you ever did. I paused, my chest tight with emotion. That's why I built something that actually lasts. And with that, I hung up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about the business falling apart. I wasn't worried about what Dad would think. I was focused on my own legacy, and that felt better than any hand-me-down success I'd ever been promised. 3 days after that phone call, the one where Dad accused me of embarrassing the family, Ironhawk dropped their quarterly report, and it was a bombshell. Contractor accounts up 28%. Inventory turnover improved. Customer satisfaction spiking. Market share in our metro area up by 11%. In tool industry language, that's not a shift. It's an earthquake. I was in the company Slack when Mason posted the graph. Bold, clean, with a bright green upward line that felt like an arrow through my chest. Great work, team, he wrote. This one's for the spreadsheet kid who said we could shave 3 to 4 seconds off our cart checkout flow. You were right. My cheeks flushed so hard I felt warm. The team exploded with reactions. Fire emojis, confetti, even a meme of a hawk wearing sunglasses. For the first time in my life, I felt something I never tasted at Henderson Tools. Pride, validation, belonging. The next day, Ironhawk's advisory board email came through. Official onboarding, welcome Trisha Hayes. A seat at the table, my name on the letterhead. A quiet, powerful acknowledgement that my work mattered. And Ironhawk didn't do flashy PR. They didn't have dramatized announcement videos. They simply made a LinkedIn post, professional, understated, but sharp. A headshot of each new advisory board member. I was the fourth slide. Clean button down, simple smile, no blazer, just me. I wanted to look like someone who wasn't trying too hard, someone who blended creativity with competence, someone who didn't need a last name to walk into a room. 30 minutes later, my phone lit up. My group chat, Trisha, is this you? Holy shit. Girl power. Your dad is gonna faint. Lisa, the receptionist at Henderson. You're officially my favorite Hayes. Don't tell HR. Even Adam, sweet, steady Adam, sent a whole paragraph about how proud he was. But the one call I wasn't expecting came from Dad. His name flashed across my screen like a ghost. I stared at it for a long moment, then picked up. Hello? A beat of silence. So it's true, he said. Not hi, not congratulations. Just accusation. Yes, I said, it's true. You've been working with Ironhawk for almost 2 years? His breath was sharp, heavy, almost disbelieving. Closer to 18 months, I corrected. You joined their board last week. I did. Another pause. I could hear him inhaling, like he was preparing a speech he'd rehearsed in the mirror. So this whole time, while we were losing accounts, while our portal was failing, while we were trying to modernize, you were what? Helping them? Helping them undermine everything I built? His voice cracked on the word everything. No, I said. And I meant it. I wasn't trying to destroy your business. I was trying to build mine. You just happened to be standing in the way. He exhaled like I'd punched him. I'm still your father. I know. And I raised you better than this. A humorless laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Dad, you didn't raise me to build anything. You raised me to fetch coffee, to stay in the warehouse, to say, yes, sir. You didn't train me. You contained me. That's not fair, isn't it? I closed my eyes, remembering 15-year-old me watching Mara climb into Dad's truck for another leadership shadow day, while I stayed behind sorting wrench sizes. Do you remember when I was 12? I asked, and I begged to go with you to the distributor meeting. You told me I wasn't ready. The next year you took Mara. That was different. No, I said softly. It wasn't. It was the same. You just never saw me as an option. The line went quiet, not angry, not defensive, just quiet, like he'd run out of excuses and finally hit the truth. I don't understand what you think you're doing, he said at last. There was no bite in the words anymore, just confusion. I'm building something that lasts, I said. Not because of family, not because of legacy, because it works. You blindsided me, he muttered. You embarrassed this family. There it was. The line he always used when he didn't want to say he was hurt. I didn't embarrass anyone, I replied. I just stopped pretending your approval was the only way to succeed. He didn't respond. He just hung up. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And instead of feeling victorious, I felt hollow. Because here's the truth. I didn't want him to crumble. I didn't want Henderson Tools to collapse. I didn't want revenge more than I wanted recognition. I just wanted him to see me. But he never did. And by the time he realized what I was capable of, it wasn't admiration. It was resentment. The downfall of Henderson Tools didn't come with a courtroom showdown or bankruptcy banners. It came with a single, brutal Yelp review from a big contractor named Vernon. Used Henderson for 18 years. Last 3 orders wrong or late. Switched to Ironhawk. Smoothest onboarding ever. They even had a dashboard. Henderson still faxes stuff. The review got 143 likes. Ironhawk commented, "Welcome aboard, Vernon. We've got your back." That was the crack. Then came the landslide. Contractors switched in droves. Shipping partners whispered about big changes in the market. Ironhawk's graphs popped like popcorn. Numbers rising, Henderson's shrinking. I watched it happen in real time, quietly, methodically, with a bittersweet ache in my chest. Then the headline broke. Henderson tools to close regional distribution center. Sources say financial strain and outdated systems to blame. The official press statement tried to make it sound like a strategic transition. Translation? They were sinking. That night, my team at Ironhawk celebrated in Slack, posting memes and jokes. But I didn't join the celebration. Because I wasn't just a consultant or a board member or a strategist. I was the daughter of the man whose company was crumbling, and the architect of the business rising in its place. Weeks passed, and the downward spiral at Henderson became public knowledge. Even the local press started picking up on the story, with reports of longtime suppliers leaving, contractors switching loyalties, and tech issues that should have been addressed a decade ago. As much as I tried to focus on the work I was doing at Ironhawk, there were moments, quiet, lonesome moments, when my thoughts would drift back to Dad. I had done everything I could to break free from his shadow, and yet the weight of that connection still lingered. The call came a week after the news broke about the distribution center's closure. It was Mom. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the area code was from home. "Trisha," she said, her voice tight, like she had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times before dialing. "We need to talk." I felt my pulse spike, instinctively bracing for some emotional plea, a call for reconciliation. "I can't do this over text," she continued. "Meet us tomorrow at the same coffee shop, the one near the house." That was the place, the one where Dad and Mara had always gotten the priority, where I was pushed to the background, where I was told I wasn't built for business. I thought about ignoring it, but something pulled me to go. Maybe it was the unspoken part of me still yearning for closure. Maybe I just wanted to hear what they had to say now. The next morning, I sat at the corner table, just like I had so many times before. Mom and Dad showed up 5 minutes late, just like old habits. They wore matching beige jackets, looking like they were auditioning for a role in a shame-filled reality show. There was no warmth, no apology in their eyes, just a cold kind of familiarity. I ordered a plain coffee, no cream. Old habits die hard. They sat across from me, silent for a long stretch. Then Mom pulled out a manila folder, slid it across the table. It felt like she was offering me a contract, not a conversation. Inside was a business proposal, new branding, a pivot into digital logistics under the name Carter Tech Solutions. My mind was spinning. Carter? They were rebranding Henderson Tools, not just shifting the strategy, but it was more than that. It was desperation in disguise. They were asking me to take the reins, to join their reboot of the very business I had been rejected from for years. They wanted me to help them salvage their legacy. They were asking for my help, my name, the one they'd always dismissed as irrelevant until it became a value they could no longer ignore. I flipped through the folder, reading each line. Branding sheets, financial projections, even a poorly designed vision for Carter Tech Solutions. I felt a sickening mix of anger and something like betrayal. They thought they could just throw me into their sinking ship because I had become useful, because they were desperate. I put the folder down, my hands trembling but my resolve clear. "You want me to help you save this?" I asked, holding up the proposal. "After everything?" My voice was steady, though inside I was furious. Furious at the audacity. Furious at how they had used me, discarded me, and now, when their business was on the brink of collapse, wanted to use my name to try and stay afloat. "Trisha," Mom said, her voice soft, "we were wrong. We misjudged you. You've built something real. Your reputation in the industry is solid. We've clearly made mistakes, and we know you've proven yourself. This is a real opportunity." A real opportunity? I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned back and stared at them both, at the people who had told me for years that I wasn't smart enough, that I didn't have the right skills. Now they wanted me to take their sinking ship and steer it in the direction of success? Their success? "No," I said firmly, feeling the weight of the years lift from my shoulders. "I already am part of something meaningful. I'm building something that matters. I didn't need your approval, your name, or your permission to get here." Mom opened her mouth, but I cut her off before she could try again. "You told me I wasn't smart enough to run a business. You told me I was just the warehouse worker's daughter. You raised Mara to be the leader and me to be the helper." Dad looked down at the table, avoiding my eyes for the first time in my life. "You're not trying to save a legacy," I said, my voice barely a whisper now. "You're trying to survive, and I'm not your exit strategy." I stood up and left the folder on the table, unopened. I didn't look back. They didn't call after me. They didn't ask for another chance or apologize. They just sat there, two people with matching regret, two people who had never seen me as more than a footnote. I didn't wait for a grand gesture, no final argument, no reconciliation, just silence. The next morning, I logged onto the Ironhawk monthly strategy call. The team was in full swing, throwing out new ideas for contractor loyalty programs, tweaking marketing plans, discussing the next expansion into new states. It was all so real, so genuine. Mason joked about my revenge glow up, and someone posted a meme of me photoshopped into Iron Man's suit. It felt like home, like I'd finally found where I belonged, not because of my last name, not because of anything I had inherited, but because of the work I had done and the value I had earned on my own. That night, as I sat on my balcony, the cool air around me and the city skyline stretched out before me, I realized something important. I didn't need their business. I didn't need their legacy. I needed to build my own, better, stronger, and I was doing it. I wasn't angry at my family anymore. I wasn't angry at Dad or Mara. I just understood. Some legacies aren't inherited, they're built. And I was already building mine. The next few days passed in a blur. Emails, strategy calls, contractor feedback sessions, UX mock-ups to refine. My calendar was stacked, my focus sharp, and for the first time in years, my confidence wasn't something I had to fake. It was real. It showed in my voice, in the way I spoke up in meetings, in the clarity of my decisions. But even as Ironhawk thrived, the storm at Henderson Tools only worsened. Within a week, 3 more contractors publicly announced their switch to Ironhawk. One even posted a TikTok calling Henderson a museum exhibit pretending to be a business. It got 500,000 views. Colin posted a carefully worded update on LinkedIn, trying to make the closure of the distribution center sound like a win. "We're strategically realigning our territorial structure to focus on the future of industry innovation." Translation: they were bleeding out and didn't know how to stop it. Meanwhile, Ironhawk sent out a press release that was the exact opposite of dramatic: quiet, professional, to the point. They were expanding statewide, adding a new regional warehouse, launching new contractor dashboards, and rolling out the initiative I had helped design. The irony? Dad would have called it fluff, but the contractors were eating it up. One night, while waiting on a new beta test report, I checked the Henderson Tools website just out of curiosity. 404, page not found. Just a little animation of a sad hammer spinning in place. It felt surreal. Henderson Tools. The empire Dad had built, the thing he valued over every birthday, holiday, graduation, every moment he could have spent actually seeing me instead of evaluating me, gone. Collapsed under its own stubbornness. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't gloating. If anything, it felt like watching the end of a story I hadn't finished writing. But the new chapter, that one was mine. A few days later, Ironhawk held a small advisory board meeting, half update, half brainstorming session. Mason hopped on first, grin wide. "Team," he said, "we just closed our biggest contractor account yet, and the onboarding was seamless. Props to Trisha for the new layout." The board clapped. I tried not to blush. Failed miserably. Then Mason added, "Also, congrats to the team. We're officially launching statewide next quarter, and if projections are right, we'll own majority market share in 3 regions." Majority market share. If Dad saw this chart, he'd implode. The meeting ended with Mason saying, "Let's keep building what works, and let's keep listening." Listening. Something Dad had never learned to do. That night, Adam came over with takeout. He didn't ask questions, didn't make comments about my family. He just kissed my forehead, set the food on the table, and let me talk through everything at my own pace. I didn't realize how much I needed that, someone who valued me without needing proof or data. We sat on my couch, eating spring rolls and watching stupid videos on YouTube, and for once, it felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of an entire legacy on my shoulders. Just myself, and that was enough. 2 days later, Mom texted, Just 5 words. Your father wants to talk. I expected to ignore it. I expected to delete it. But instead I typed back, I'm busy. Because I was. Truly, actually busy. With work that mattered. With people who believed in me. With a future I was building brick by brick. The difference between being needed and being wanted couldn't have been clearer. Henderson Tools needed me. But Ironhawk wanted me. And I wanted myself. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about Dad. About the office where he laughed at my proposal. About the binder he never opened. About the opportunities he gave to Mara and withheld from me. I used to replay those moments and wonder what I could have done differently. Now, I saw them for what they were. His limitations, not mine. I wasn't the daughter who failed to impress him. I was the daughter he failed to see. On a Friday afternoon, Mason sent me a message. We're planning a national contractor loyalty program. Want to help spearhead the rollout? I stared at the message, feeling something warm spread through my chest. A few years ago, I was begging Dad for a chance. Now I was being invited, not out of pity or obligation, but because of merit, to help build something bigger than anything Henderson Tools ever dreamed of. I typed back, yes, absolutely yes. That evening, I went up to my apartment balcony, a cheap beer in hand, the city lights shimmering below like a sea of possibilities. The same city Dad said I'd never make it in without carrying his last name like a badge. Turns out I didn't need his name. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need Henderson Tools. I just needed to believe that I was capable of more than the role I'd been assigned. And I was. I was the smart one after all, just not in the way he expected.